All right. Hi, everyone. Like I said earlier, my name is Mike. I work for PEPID. I'm part of the Clinical and Integration Solutions team. Today, we're going to be presenting our virtual booth for HIMSS, and the topic today is PGX for Providers. The subtitle, Facilitating Focus for Physicians and Pharmacists. I couldn't resist the alliteration on this one. So we're going to be talking about pharmacogenomics and how to maximize the potential of this sort of new field of personalized medicine when it comes to using the information available to us to help support providers. We'll get into a little more detail of what that means, obviously, as we move along. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is the challenge. So as many of you will know, pharmacogenomics is the study of how our medications, different drugs, different substances interact with a patient's individual genetic makeup. Different people with different different genes are going to process drugs and substances differently from each other. And so this means that one treatment option that works for one patient may not work for another. How can we make sure that we're optimizing the therapies that we're using for our patients to their personal genetic code? So that's why we use the term personalized medicine or precision medicine to talk about the use of pharmacogenomics to better tailor and better target treatment options. So obviously this involves a massive amount of information. We have to have information about the genes, about the enzymes that they're producing, about the drugs themselves and the interactions between all of them. And so this means, like I was saying, there's a lot of information involved, massive quantities of information that have to be organized in order to present that the information in what I'm calling a meaningful way. So obviously, if we were to just give a big printout of all the different possible interactions between, any given patient's genetic makeup and any given drug that they're taking, it would be far too overwhelming. We have to find ways that are presenting the information that's relevant, the information that's meaningful for a provider to that provider in a way that allows them to absorb that info and allow them to progress through their process, through their workflow. And so that's what I see as the challenge of implementing pharmacogenomics in a meaningful way, is how do we organize all that information to make it effective? So this is a slide that I was using in my previous presentation. We gave an earlier presentation for the HIMSS virtual booths. And I gave a presentation about the topic of providing clinical information that is actually helping facilitate medical decision making. And I wanted to bring back that same slide because I think that it's relevant here again. The goal for us in implementing pharmacogenomics, like I said in the previous slide, is how do we present it or organize this information in a meaningful way? And to me, and for many of us here at PEPID, when we're choosing, how to organize or how to lay out our tools and our solutions, it comes back to medical decision making. In other words, when I'm a provider and I need to look at information that's going to help me make a choice about patient care, that moment is it's the point of care. It's the moment that we want to gear our pharmacogenomic solutions towards, helping to facilitate medical decision making, focus on what's important in that process. And I'm using the same 4 bullet points from my previous presentation here, the first one being that if we want to help facilitate medical decision making, make a meaningful impact on that, the first thing is that the information, of course, has to be evidence-based. You want to make sure that the information is current, that it's been researched, that it's well supported by the evidence. And of course, that's crucial in pharmacogenomics just as anywhere. The second point on my slide here is about fast navigation. This, again, was something that I was talking about in the presentation of our content for facilitating decision-making earlier. What fast navigation comes down to, for me, is a responsive interface, allowing interactivity that allows the provider to look at the information that they want to look at, and not necessarily information that they don't. Having something that allows them to drill down into the piece that they are interested in looking at in a way that's responsive, in a way that's intuitive, and that doesn't weigh them down with extraneous features or extraneous information. The next point is having content that's high yield. This is a term that, again, I like to use all the time. Presenting information that is going to give me the most bang for my buck. I'm not organizing things into long paragraphs that are going to mean I have to do a lot of scrolling or a lot of scanning through the written information to find what it is that I want to find. And that dovetails into the next point, which is the relevant information. Presenting things that, again, are going to help me make a choice about patient care. And especially in the world of pharmacogenomics, this means things that are relevant to my specific patient. It's personalized medicine. It should be presenting information that is personalized to the patient that I'm caring for, that I'm looking at in that moment. So I wanted to kind of walk through each of those steps. So again, to the point about presenting information that's relevant, information that's high yield, we at PEPID like to focus on the idea of making information both actionable and concise. Again, that's focusing on the details that are relevant both to me as the provider, but also to the specific patients that I'm looking at. And we want to organize that information so that it is easily read. I mentioned on the last slide the idea of wanting to avoid lengthy paragraphs that require a lot of scrolling whenever possible. And so for PEPID, what we like to do is we like to organize information into bullet points as much as possible. You can see again on even this PowerPoint in front of you or any PowerPoint presentation that you've ever been to, normally people like to organize the information into bullet points. It's just easier to read, it's easier for a user to comprehend, and so we think that in the realm of pharmacogenomics, where again, there is so much information to be sorted through, you want to make sure that you're presenting that information in short, succinct sentences that get to the crux of what is going to help you make a patient care decision. Another big point to cover there is allowing filtering. So for anybody who hasn't looked at a pharmacogenomic report before, a lot of times what you'll get is a sort of a static PDF that gives all the possible pharmacogenomic interactions between a patient's, one patient's genetic makeup and the drugs that they're currently taking. And so this will include all interactions. That's both the ones that are, anything that could be potentially dangerous or really serious, all the way down to things that are fairly benign or low-level interactions. So obviously, as a provider, the high level, the more dangerous or the more severe interactions, those are obviously the things that we want to focus on and avoid. And ideally, we don't want to be flipping through many pages on a PDF trying to get through the interactions that we're not as worried about to get to the interactions that we want. So allowing filtering is something that that I think is really important for making sure that we're maximizing our use of pharmacogenomic information. So to that point about allowing filtering, another thing that we think is really important for maximizing the value of PGX for providers is allowing an interactive interface of some kind. Again, a PDF report, while it can contain all the information that you might need to find, isn't the best method necessarily for allowing a provider to interact with it, obviously, or to focus on the information that's most important to them. Another big differentiator between a PDF report versus an interactive interface is that it allows the provider to get real-time results. When part of the reason why we want to get personalized results, personalized pharmacogenomic interaction results, is that we are going to make some kind of a change. We want to make sure that the therapy that we're prescribing or the treatment that we're going to be having the patient go through is maximized for them. And so we need to be able to look at results that are not just based on the drugs that the patient is currently taking, but based on drugs that they could be taking, so that we're being proactive in deciding what medications we're going to be using. That means, to the bullet point here on this page, that some amount of substitution testing or experimentation where we can see what interactions might occur with a drug that we're considering prescribing is really critical. We don't want to get a report that shows just interactions with the drugs I'm currently taking and then need to order a separate static report in order to see, other possible alternatives. We want to be able to do that interactively in real time. And another crucial point about that is that this is a step that allows the user, or the provider in this case, to be engaged. We really want to make sure that we're involving the provider in experimenting with these different therapies, and that they're, taking an active role, again, a proactive role in personalizing their care for their patient. So again, to the idea of engaging the provider, we also think it's important to incorporate relevant CDS or clinical decision support into places where it makes sense. The pharmacogenomic report, pharmacogenomic information about a patient is obviously just one piece, obviously a big piece, a personalized piece, but still one piece of the whole view of the patient. So when looking at interactions between a patient and their genetic code, we also want to be taking into account other interactions that could be occurring, like interactions between two different drugs. If I order a drug for a patient knowing that they won't have the same sort of pharmacogenomic interaction, I still need to be aware if that drug is going to interact with other medications that the patient is currently taking. So we want to make sure that drug-to-drug interactions are not being siloed off or kept in a separate place from the pharmacogenomic interactions. This is really critical to have in one place, so that we make sure that we're presenting, again, that more full view of the patient, of any risks that they might be facing, and making sure that the barriers for our providers are lower. Again, the focus of this is PGX for providers, and we want to make sure that that information is being presented together, so that they don't have to be, again, flipping through separate reports, looking at different tools in order to help make decisions about how they're going to care for their patient. And another big tool, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is the ability to find those alternative therapies. We want to make sure that, if you're going to allow what we call substitution testing, checking to see how a different drug than what the patient is currently taking is going to interact, there needs to be some kind of interactive component or some kind of tool that it will allow you to check for those alternative therapies. Again, we don't want to be ordering extraneous reports. We want to get results that are in real time in some way. And this is, again, just another piece that we don't want to keep siloed off from our reports about the pharmacogenomic interactions that we're seeing. This also applies to other tools. I listed here dosing calculators. If I am going to be prescribing or ordering medication, I want to make sure that I can double check the right dose, or things like clinical guidelines, basic drug information about that drug, the adverse reactions that can occur outside of anything to do with a patient's, genetic makeup. We want to make sure that those things are incorporated in a place that makes sense. So in summary, how do we make sure that we're focused on providers, that we're leveraging pharmacogenomic information and data in a way that is helping facilitate focus for our physicians and pharmacists? Number one, again, it's providing actionable information, sorting through the wealth of information that's out there to provide concise information focused on decision making. And the second step is allowing interaction with the data. Static reports can create barriers to helping providers focus on patient care, focus on finding the information that they need. So having an interactive component or an interactive interface is really critical for that. And the last thing is just to avoid siloing off the reporting about pharmacogenomic information, pharmacogenomic interactions from other CDS tools or other clinical tools that you're using. You want to make sure that this information is incorporated into a full view of the patient, and it's not kept separate from from everything else that you're doing. So in a nutshell, that covers our presentation, and I wanted to just briefly transition here to showing a sample. This is a demo portal that PEPID has created to show how our pharmacogenomic database could be used to help act on some of these pointers that we're talking about here. So I'm going to transition out of my PowerPoint, and I'm going to open up my web portal here. Excuse me one moment while I log in here. And so to briefly familiarize you with what I'm showing right now. So I'm logged into an online portal. I'm just using a web browser. This is, like I was saying, a demo platform just for demonstration purposes to show how our PEPID's pharmacogenomic information can be used. I've got a bar here at the top, and I'm separated into two panels. So I've got a left-hand panel and a right-hand panel. My left-hand panel is showing information about my patient here in the top left corner. So I'm going to be choosing from a list of imaginary patients here. I have a few to choose from. I'm going to choose the somewhat conspicuously named Mrs. Alzheimer's Drugs. And then I'll show you a little bit about how this demo platform works. All right, so I've picked a patient, Mrs. Alzheimer's Drugs, and then in my left-hand panel, I'm showing the current medications that this patient is taking. So we've prescribed a number of drugs to the missus here. On the right-hand side, I've got some demographic information about the patient. So I can see a made-up patient ID. Again, this patient is totally made up, so no worries about confidentiality here. We've selected an age for her, date of birth, etc. So right next to the name of my patient, I've got a couple of different options. So the profile option is going to show the information that I've got in my right-hand panel here, basic demographic data, that kind of thing. The med list for my patient is going to be showing these drugs that I have down here. So you can see you've got aripiprazole, donepezil, a few others, all in my med list. And then the last thing that we can change in, again, this just purely for demonstration interface, is the labs. So this is going to be the genetic results that we get from testing my patient's genome. If I want, I can click on this labs link. You can see we've chosen to leave a lot of these different enzymes, their phenotypes blank. So I've got not available for a number of these enzymes. But we're going to be saying that this patient, at CYP2D6, they're an ultra rapid metabolizer. Same for CYP3845. So I'm going to go ahead and use the default that we have, just a couple of enzymes listed here so that we can see the interactions that we might get with these drugs that we have prescribed for her. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Show PGX, and then we'll get to dive into the interesting stuff. All right, so now on in my left-hand panel here, now I've got my interaction checker. So you can see, again, my selected drugs are listed here, and then as I scroll down, I've got a number of interactions. There's a lot of interactions here that I can scroll through. So I'm going to go ahead and just shorten up these alerts real quick here. This kind of speaks to the point that I was talking about earlier with regards to filtering of results. You can see I've got 78 interactions. That's a lot of interactions to comb through. So I want to make sure that I can filter or drill down into results as I need to. So I can see I've got a set of color-coded icons here showing my level of interaction severity. So 5 in red, that's going to be our most severe. the one in green, that's going to be our least severe. So we're ranking interactions for you that way. And then we're also separating them by substance. So you can see spironolactone, we have our least severe interactions. I can click into this medication if I want to see the interactions. Or if I want to look at the more severe interactions, let's say that I want to look at my interactions with warfarin, I can click on that, and then I can see my interactions here. So as I'm combing through or filtering through my interactions, we also are incorporating a couple of other icons to the point about delivering information that's high yield that I talked about earlier. We found even by using simple icons like the ones that you see here, it can help give you some good contextual information. So I've got my little icon showing that I've got 2 crossed pills here. This is showing me that I have a drug-to-drug interaction between mirtazapine and aripiprazole. This is also speaking to the point that we made earlier about not siloing off other information, drug-to-drug interaction information, for example, from our pharmacogenomic results. If the patient is taking these 2 medications, if there's an interaction between them, I don't want to have to look somewhere else to find that there's an interaction occurring separate from my pharmacogenomic interaction. So I've got a result, you know, an alert icon right here. So that's our 2 crossed pills icon. Then we've also got a double helix icon here. And this is indicating that I've got an actual pharmacogenomic interaction occurring. We also have arrows here. This is just indicating if the drug is, the levels of the drug are being increased or decreased in my patient. So again, even at the alert level, we want to give you little indicators, little icons to kind of show what's going on. But then if I want to drill down even further, I can click on any interaction here. I'm going to click on this one. And then now in my right-hand panel, I've replaced my, my patient's demographic data, and now I've got a full interaction monograph. Every interaction, drug to drug, drug to gene, PEPID always includes a full interaction monograph for you, where I can see, you know, the mechanism of interaction, genetic phenotype, effect. And you'll also notice, I was speaking earlier about the magic of organizing things into bullet points. Everything in PEPID is written in these bullet points. We want to make the information as easy on the eyes to read and absorb as possible. So like I was saying, mechanism, genetic phenotype, the effect of this interaction, and then specific to PEPID, we also have this action section. So I know that my patient has this interaction. I want to know what the next steps are that I as a provider need to take. That's what this action section is for. Based on the evidence, we provide suggested next steps for you that are going to help guide you through that care process so that I know if I need to look at an alternative drug, if I need to alter dosing, those suggestions are going to appear for me here. Strength of recommendation, level of concern, of course, and then references are always included at the bottom. So you always know that the information that you're getting has the sources cited, it's evidence-based, it's going to be coming from the most up-to-date and current information out there. So this gives you an idea of what our interaction results look like. And then one of the big points that we were talking about in the presentation is the idea of interactivity. So I wanted to show a little bit about how this will work. So the first thing that I wanted to show is that in this interaction that I'm looking at here, if I know, okay, I've got a fairly serious, you know, a level 5 interaction here. Aripiprazole is being metabolized differently because of my patient's genetic makeup, and I want to find an alternative. So in my action section, I know, okay, I need to take some next steps. And then it gives me a suggestion about alternative drugs to consider. I've got a couple of specific suggestions here, and then I've also got a suggestion for a class of antipsychotic medications. If I want to, you'll notice that my antipsychotic drugs class is blue, it's hyperlinked. If I want to click on this class of drugs, then I can do that. I've still got my list of interactions here in my left-hand panel, but now in my right-hand panel, I've got a list of possible medications. And one thing that's really nice about this interface, if I want to just hover over a medication, then it will give me in my little tooltip here, you can see to the right where my mouse is, it will show any other interactions specified to exactly my patient's genetic makeup that are going to be occurring with that medication. I can hover over another one, and for this drug, which I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce, you can see there's no interactions found. So if I wanted to prescribe that drug, then that might be the way to go. This one has one low-level interaction as well. So these might be possible alternative therapies that I was able to check and check in real time. You know, we were also making the point about wanting to avoid siloing off relevant information. Let's say I'm considering this drug, you know, maybe I want to prescribe this one, but I want to make sure that I'm checking for any, you know, any relevant guidelines about this drug. I just click on it, and then now I've got a full monograph that's about the drug. I can see dosing information here at the top. I can check for contraindications and cautions, you know, what the drug is indicated for, adverse reactions, et cetera, et cetera. Just to trace back real quickly, so we went from looking at, you know, an interaction that was showing here in the left-hand panel. We found, you know, a suggested next step in our action section for that interaction. We found an alternative drug in the drug class that we were looking at. We were able to just hover over it to see that, you know, it had a less severe interaction for my specific patient. And then we were able to drill down even further than that to get a full breakdown of interaction or information rather about the drug, and see, you know, if it was the right fit for me. So a lot of interactivity, a lot of you know, a lot of different features included there, and it goes even one step further. Some of you might have noticed that after clicking into this drug, after reading through it, in my left-hand panel now, I've got a different number of interactions. You can see my number of interactions. It was 78, now it's 51. That's because as I was clicking through this other alternative drug, remember we were originally looking at aripiprazole. Now we've substituted pipothiazine. I apologize for my mispronunciation. It has been substituted here. You can see all of the medications that have already been prescribed or already been ordered for my patient. They're all in the bolded, you know, more bold font, and the unbolded or the more regular font. This is a drug that I'm just substituting. So I was able to see, oh, my number of interactions has decreased. If I, again, want to filter down my interactions, I can see any interactions that are specific to just that medication if I want to drill into here. And again, I was able to see that, you know, this drug is going to have less severe interaction based on my patient's genetic makeup, but then I can still see I've got a level 4 interaction between this medication and mirtazapine, another drug that my patient is already taking. So I've got a real-time result here based on my patient's, you know, medications that they're taking, that's being delivered to me at the same time as I'm considering an alternative therapy for pharmacogenomic reasons. So you can really see the power of this interface allowing me to drill down into, you know, if I want to get more information about the drug-to-drug interaction that I'm looking at, then I can get that from here. Again, I've got an action section with suggested next steps. If I wanted to add in another medication, let's say that I'm wanting to see if, you know, prescribing something unrelated will make a difference. I'm going to say I want to add like a simvastatin for this patient. I can add that in here. Again, you can see that I've got the unbolded text to show that I'm just testing this out as a substitution or, you know, as a new drug. Again, my number of interactions has increased. I can narrow down to just interactions based on that medication if I'd like. So really, you've got a huge degree of all of the points that we were trying to hit from the presentation. I've got information that is high yield information, written in bullet points. It's relevant to decision making for me as the provider. It's relevant to my patient because it's specific to their medication record, their genetic makeup. It's an interactive tool that allows me to try out different drugs, get real-time results based on what I'm looking at, and it's delivering all that information in a way that's not siloed. It gives me access to view information about my drugs. It gives me information about other drug-to-drug interactions that are occurring. I was going to show earlier as well, if I want to drill down here, I'm going to say I want to look at warfarin, a specific drug, like I was looking at earlier. Here's information about warfarin. And then we also link in other tools. So I've got my adult dosing section is here at the top. I've got dosing information that goes on below it. And then you'll notice I've got even more blue hyperlinks here, just like I was able to jump into a drug from before. I can click on these links in my dosing info and open up a dosing calculator on the left-hand side. So again, just drills down even further. I've got even more levels of interactivity here. If I want to see the right amount that I need to give to a patient, I can do that here. All right, so I've got a question from Megan asking, does the PEPID PGX, can it be integrated with your EHR? And the answer to that is yes. So we have APIs for all of PEPID services. That includes the pharmacogenomics tools as well. So yes, I always want to emphasize the interface that I was showing today is just for demonstration purposes. It's a mock-up that's designed to show some of the capability. But PEPID's pharmacogenomic information is all proprietary. We own the full database, and yes, it can be integrated with your EHR. Everything is compliant with the latest standards from HL7, and we've already got successful usage of this tool with SWOG. For anybody who's familiar with SWOG and their clinical research, this tool, a variant of this tool, has been used to help screen participants for drug approval trials. So this has already been proven to help streamline workflow and save time for patient screening, for clinical trials, like I was saying, and that's integrated with SWOG's existing platform. We've got another question from Brittany asking how many interactions is PEPID capable of doing. It's a number far too big for me to remember is the honest answer to that. Again, the point from the presentation, the amount of data that we're dealing with is massive here, but PEPID's drug database is the largest on the planet. We pride ourselves on operating internationally, so that goes beyond just US or North American drugs. It's drugs in every region, and the number of enzymes or the number of genes that are in our PGX data set is more than any other provider as well. So you know that with PEPID, you get the most comprehensive data set that's available. We've got one more question here from Nick asking what's included in the PEPID pharmacogenomic package. The answer to that is that there is some level of customizability based on the requirements of the end user. But like I was showing you, even the demo platform that we have here, that includes not just the pharmacogenomic data set, but it's also the full data set for drug-to-drug interactions, the full expanded monographs for each of those. So not just the data about the interactions, but the actual clinical information to help guide decision-making as well. Then that is also combined with the full drug database. So I showed you could click into a medication and get a full breakdown, a full detailed monograph there, showing dosing information, adverse reactions, indications, contraindications, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, I didn't even show in this demonstration, but that is also including, I can drill down further from there to our clinical information about diseases, conditions, guidelines, procedures, everything that you as a provider would need in order to in order to get through your workflow faster, make medical decisions, and help provide patient care. All right, so if that covers most of the questions that I'm getting so far, then I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to attend today. I hope that you've seen something useful. This is a topic that's obviously important to us, wanting to make sure that for all of us who are, enthralled by precision medicine or personalized medicine and all of the promise that it has for us, how can we actually make sure that we're implementing these capabilities in a way that's helping focus on our providers, helping focus on the people who are going to be using the information, making sure that they can get the most out of it. So thanks again, everyone. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and stay safe out there.